Okay, we're on. Let's, let's adjust it a bit, and we'll be starting in less than a minute. A few people on already. Okay, let's start. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Okay, so we're up to the aggregate of Sankhara, mental formations. The word, let's first discuss the word Sankhara. It's a word that its precise meaning depends on context. It's used in several different ways. In general, it means created thing, something built, constructed, or conditioned. It's from the root karoti, to make or build. So we call them in English generally formations, which is pretty good translation. It's something that's built up, so conditioned, existing due to cause and effects. The most general use of the word sankhara is just that. So that any thing that exists which is conditioned by other things, which is everything except nibbana. So sometimes a distinction is made between the terms Dhamma and Sankhara. A Dhamma is anything that can be an object of consciousness in Abhidhamma. And this includes also the unconditioned. But Sankhara does not include the unconditioned, because Nibbana is not due to cause and effect. It's not built up of other things. It's outside the realm of conditionality. So everything in the universe other than Nibbana can be called a Sankhara. So that's the most general use of the term. In the formula of the 5 aggregates, or khandha, which is what we are principally concerned with this evening, Sankhara refers to mental formations, because the bodily formations are already covered under the first aggregate. There's an even narrower use that I'll just mention. In the formula of the dependent origination, the second nidana is sankhara, because of ignorant sankharas, because of sankhara's consciousness. And sankharas are here explained to mean volitional formations. So those formations of the mind that are deliberate and are the cause of karma. So it's a subset of the mental formations as used in the formula of the aggregates, which is itself a subset of all sankharas. So when we're talking about sankharas in terms of aggregates, what we're talking about are mental formations. And this is itself somewhat distinguished from the term in Abhidhamma, which is cetasika, which are all mental processes other than chitta, other than the conscious mind. So they would also include, cetasika also includes the aggregates of perception and feeling, sanya and vedana. So Chitasaka covers the three aggregates, Vedana, Sanya, and Sankhara. This is the principal difference between the Abhidhamma division into categories and that which is found in the sutta. In the suttas, we have the five aggregates, and Sankhara are built up mental constructions. So it can be thought at first glance, it seems like since we already have Vedana and Sanya as aggregates, that Sankharas is kind of a miscellaneous category, but it's not really fair to say that. It does have a specific meaning of mental constructions. But it is a very broad category because it would include thoughts, emotions, and images, anything that's constructed in the mind. In the returning to Abhidhamma, in the list of the Chitasakas, there's actually a list of 52 Chitasakas, and two of them are, as I said, Sanya and Vedana, and the other 50 are Sankharas. And in the if you find this list in the Visuddhimagga or in the Abhidhamma Mata Sangaha, which are commentarial works, you'll find that it's intended by the commentators to be a closed list, but this wasn't the original intention. In the Dhamma Sangani, which is a canonical text of the Abhidhamma, the list of Chitasakas is shorter, and it ends with the phrase, and whatever other mental states may arise at that time. So you'll see a curious phrase in the English translation of the Visuddhimagga. It's Nyanamoli's translation of Buddhaghosa's words. Now, Buddhaghosa classifies different groups of these Chitasakas, and one group he calls in English translation, the or whatever states. And the origin of that odd phrase is from the Dhamma Sangani, where it says, whatever other states may arise at this time, and the attempt by the commentators to close that list and add another, I forget, it's 8 or 10, something like that, states to complete the list of possible mental formations. But I don't think this, in my own opinion, I think this is a bit arbitrary on the part of the commentators. I think it would be better to leave the list open. Whatever is constructed by the mind can be called a sankhara. And various constellations of sankharas occur in each moment of consciousness. And a large part of the project of Abhidhamma is classifying which sankharas arise, or using Abhidhamma terminology, which Chitasakas arise associated with which mental states. There are 7 Chitasakas that would fall under the category of sankharas, or 5 of them are sankharas that are said to be universal. They occur in each moment of consciousness, irregardless of whether it's a skillful moment, unskillful, or functional, or karma resultant. These states always occur, and that they include Vedana, feeling, and Sanya, perception. Each moment of consciousness will have those 2 aggregates associated with it. But also, as a minimum, there will be 5 mental formations. Phassa, which is contact, This term also occurs in the dependent origination. It's the moment when sense consciousness, sense object, and sense organ come together. This is called contact. It's an event of cognition. When we see, hear, or smell something, this is contact, sense contact with the outer world. Chetana is always present. Chetana is translated as volition. So this is important and interesting, that Chaitanya is classed as a universal, that each moment of consciousness, there's some karmic making potential present, that there's a will, there's a volition present in consciousness. It always occurs. Um, so this sometimes the question whether Buddhists believe in free will or determinism comes up. I think to a large degree that question is wrongly framed in terms of Buddhism, because there's no self, and the Western debate between free will and determinism is very much centered on a act of self. So the question itself is borders on meaningless in a Buddhist context, but I think we, in a looser definition, I think we have to come down on the side of free will, because the presence of volition or chaitanya in every moment of consciousness. Then ekagata, which is the singleness, unity of mind. And this is one of the jhana factors. When it's developed and consistent, the mind is unified on a single object. This is the deep samadhi, and ekagata, or unity of mind, is always present throughout the jhanas. But even in ordinary consciousness, there's ekagata for an instant. This refers back to the abhidhamma idea that each moment of consciousness, there can only be one object. There's no such thing as seeing and hearing at the same time. There's what is thought of as seeing and hearing together is really a very rapid switching back and forth between moments of eye consciousness and moments of ear consciousness. So in each single moment, the mind is only taking one object, one chitta and one dhamma. So it's always singular. So ekagata is a universal principle. Then there's a jiva tindriya, which is the life faculty. And the life faculty is always present in the mind-body system until you're dead. So every moment of being alive, there's this faculty, or the word indriya means like a faculty or a power. So your superpower is being alive, jiva tindriya. In plants, for example, the theory is that plants have jiva tindriya, they have life faculty, but they don't have consciousness. So jiva tindriya, or life faculty, is something separate from consciousness. It's the faculty of being alive. It distinguishes living things from inanimate matter. And finally, the last universal is the manasakara, or attention, because at each moment, together with the ekagata, the one-pointedness, that the mind will be attending to something. Consciousness is always attending to a dhamma. So attention is given to the momentarily to whatever is the object of consciousness. So these sankharas are universal. They're always occurring. Other sankharas are variable. Um, and they would include such factors as vitaka and vichara, which together make up thought and speech. They would include qualities like the Brahma Viharas, like metta and so on, and also negative qualities, negative mental formations like ill will, delusion, envy, and so on. So when we go a bit beyond the momentary analysis of a single moment of consciousness, and we look at what's more accessible or more practical on an ordinary level of the stream of consciousness that we're experiencing all the time, a multitude of mental formations. We're always thinking, daydreaming, imagining, and so on. And this is something that people know who take up meditation, how difficult it is to still that stream of mental construction. When you can have a moment between thoughts, it's already a step, that something something to notice. This busyness of the mind is so prevalent in most people that I think people who haven't thought about it or studied confuse consciousness with mental formations. And they're two quite different things. We'll talk about next week, we'll talk about consciousness, chitta, vijnana, but we'll see here that mental formations are not consciousness, they're objects of consciousness. Consciousness is aware of the mental processing that goes on. I think on a maybe a slightly speculative note, I think we could say that much of what we classify as mental formations could be, at least in theory, reduced to algorithms. So could be mimicked by a computer. And this is what I think we talk about artificial intelligence. They're machines that can mimic the creation of mental formations. But there's no conceivable way in which an algorithm can be written to account for consciousness. Perhaps we'll get into that more next week. So mental formations are a product that is a product of the mind that is very definitely conditioned. And this is where the name comes from. These are conditioned formations in the mind, arising from cause and effect. So they're not random. They always have a chaitana attached to them. So there's an element of kama, however light, associated with every thought. And because of the conditionality, there's no randomness. Although it can seem that the mind can seem at times to be disordered and random, everything which arises actually occurs due to conditions. So I'd like to suggest a little exercise for to explore this. Whether you're in meditation or otherwise, if you find your mind has gone off on some strange tangent, you're thinking about something odd, and where did that come from? Stop and try and retroactively trace back where the thought formation came from. What was I thinking about immediately prior to that? And if you've able to do this, and if you have enough mindfulness, and remember that sati, mindfulness, is tied in with memory. So if you have a good sati, you should be able to reconstruct your thought process backwards. You'll see there's always a linking connection. And very often, and I'm thinking particularly in the case of someone who's silently meditating and not trying to think, or actually, in a way, trying not to think, but it's gone off on a kind of tangent of thought. If you trace it back, you'll very often find that the first seed or root of that cascade of thoughts began with a sense impression. There'll be a sound or a smell or a sensation in the body, and there'll be a reaction to it, and then a sankhara will arise on top of the reaction, and that'll link to another sankhara, and so on until it's quite far from the original source. What we call thinking is primarily the activity of the two factors, vitakka and vichara. These occur as factors in first jhana. They're in a most general sense, they're the energies or activities of the mind that manipulate objects. Okay, the vitakka grasps the object, and vichara holds the object. So an analogy is like the Visuddhimagga has several analogies to try and explain this. One of them is you're polishing some brass object. So with your left hand, you hold the object steady, and that's like vichara. And then with the right hand, you rub the object with the cloth, and that's like vitakka. So they work together in the manipulation of objects. And the expression of vitakka vichara in ordinary life is thought and speech, which can be more or less skillful, obviously. If someone is very rational, logical in their thought process, and a good speaker, then they're skillful at using these qualities of vitakka vichara. In the meditation, in samatha meditation, in first jhana, vitakka vichara are still present, and that means that that energy is now used to hold and strike the desired object of meditation, whether it be the breath or otherwise. But because, and in second, third, fourth jhana, vitakka vichara cease. But because they're still present in first jhana, there's still some amount of thought formation. You're not entirely beyond thought formation in first jhana. So before I end the formal remarks, is something about a relation to sankharas in practice. The important thing, I think, is to distinguish between chitta and chittasika, or the knowing mind and the object. A lot of our confusion and suffering in life comes from identifying with the objects of consciousness. So if an unwholesome object like anger arises in the mind, it's not skillful to view that as I am angry. It's more skillful to view it as anger is an object. Here is anger. To see it objectively, it's outside of the chitta, the knowing. The knowing mind itself is not angry. But it knows anger. And if you're centered in the chitta, which is really the the essence of the Thai forest practice is being centered in the knowing. Be the knowing. And then the objects, the sankharas, are seen external to that and not identified with. They're not me, not mine. And it's a very liberating way to hold your being. So I'll stop there for a few remarks on sankharas, and we'll see what I can deal with from the questions. I see the chat is already quite busy. Let's see here. Oh, okay. I thank you, Palpatine, for informing me on that. I wondered about that. I'm getting weird emails from him. Okay, next. What are your thoughts on some monks saying we are all arhants to begin with, and then we do something, and then we be something else? And give example of a rusty iron. The iron is always there. I don't think that's correct. I don't think we're arhants to begin with. But I do think that we have that potential, and the deepest part of our essence of our being is emptiness, luminosity, spaciousness, um, and it's overlaid by defilements. So if you take the temporal, the time-oriented aspect out of it, you could say in some sense that we're all primordially enlightened, because that's the most essential base of our being. But I don't think there was a time in the past when we were enlightened and we're not anymore. Ajahn, I just want to confirm that the Sankhara from the Aggregates is not the same as Sankhara from dependent origination. Well, it is and it isn't. The Sankhara from dependent origination is a subset of the Sankharas from the Aggregates. It doesn't include all the Sankharas, but only volitional formations. That is, Sankharas that are actions of the mind that produce karma. So it doesn't include resultant factors. So it's a little narrower. It's the same definition, but narrower. It doesn't include all the aggregate formations. Is the triple gem the only refuge we have in the face of impermanence and dukkha? Yes, yeah, that's the idea of the triple gem. Is nibbana the returning to potentiality of sunyata, or it's the convergence of the process itself? Again, I would caution the questioner, and this kind of question that comes up often about trying to define nibbana, just try and give up on the idea of defining nibbana, because however you try and define it, it's just going to lead to confusion, because it's beyond. Nibbana is by definition outside of the realm of logical discourse. So any kind of attempt to pin it down with definitions is going to be misleading. We know the three characteristics of samsara: anicca, dukkha, anatta. It's the opposite of the characteristics nibbana. Partially true. Anicca and dukkha are said to apply to all sankharas. There's a line in the suttas that all formations or sankharas are impermanent, all are suffering, dukkha. But then it changes and says all dhammas are anatta, without self. So nibbana, anatta and its correlate factor, sunyata, are the most universal because it applies to nibbana as well as samsara. In some suttas, they are mocking Ajnana and Jain leader, making them look like charlatans. Do you think the Buddha actually mocked other traditions like this, or is this a result of fanatical monks? Well, yeah, there's no real way of knowing exactly, because we have to remember that always that the texts that we have are the product of tradition and passed through various, beginning with the councils, various kind of processes of transmission, and we can't be sure exactly in every detail whether they're faithfully reporting the words and activities of the Buddha. I would say that also that if you get into the commentaries, they go much further than the suttas in mocking these leaders, making them look ridiculous. Uh, would it be helped to understand mental formations better by viewing them as a dreamlike state? Um, yeah, there's that's a interesting question. The relationship of our formations and perception in the waking state and in the dream state. And I touched on this a little bit last time dealing with sanya. Um, we uh, in the dream state where our perception is only working with mental formations. In the waking state, we're also working with sense perceptions. So there is a way you could say it's true that we dream the world, because perception, the sanya quality, works the same in both dreaming and waking, except that the input is different. In the at night dreaming, the only input to sanya is mental fabrications, whereas in the waking state, uh, there's sense perceptions as well as mental formations. Okay, let's go on here. Is nibbana the escape from cause and effect? Yes, that's what it's called, asankata, the unconditioned. There are many different conscientiousness. I think you mean consciousnesses, I assume. There are many different consciousness inhabiting our bodies when we dream. Are we dreaming some of of their memories as well as ours? Um, well, the sources of dreams are many. Actually a sutta where the Buddha talks about the different causes of dreams. And he says some are memories of the past, some are visions of the future, some are messages from devas, and some are wind in the belly, meaning it's just meaningless, just disturbances in the mind body system. So a lot of our dreams fall in that last category. They're just nonsense. It's just random noise in the mind that's being organized into pictures and images. But we do have sometimes significant dreams, and memories of the past can include past life memories. I think that's more common. Past life memories occurring in dreams, I think, is more common than people realize, because often they're not really accurate. They can be a little bit mixed up with the present life, but there's still input from previous experiences, previous lifetimes. Messages from devas, sometimes there's external factors that come in and play. We contact with these other consciousness in our dream state. I think that's less common, but I think it does occur. If there is no self, then who or what exactly are metta given to? Well, you have to understand that it doesn't matter whether there's a self or not. There's still the experience of pleasure and pain. There's still beings that have that experience, but there's no metaphysical or ontological self. So there's no contradiction in doing metta. Why is it that minds are constantly filled with formations like thoughts, daydreams, etc.? Once one becomes aware of it, is it really quite tiresome and often seems to be filled with nonsense? Yes, yes, that's very true. And I think this is an experience many people have when they take up meditation. And they realize for the first time just how cluttered and confused their mind is. And it's one of the benefits of meditation is to calm and discipline that mental processing, so that one's not so overwhelmed with all the confusion and strangeness that goes on in the mind. We begin to bring it under control. It's one of the qualities of an arahant. It's said that the arahant has complete control of the pathways of the mind. He only thinks what he wishes to think when he wishes to think. So that thought should be our servant, not our master, and we should be working towards uh, that ideal. What is the difference between Nirodha Sampatti and Arahant Pala Samadhi? Is one considered a better attainment, and why? Um, I don't know if we can say one is better than the other. Nirodha Sampatti is sometimes called the ninth jhana. It's a state of immersion into nibbana that's available. You have to be already an anagami before you can experience that. Arahant Pala Samadhi is again a realization of the fruit of the path, which is nibbana. So it's the mind, the arahant, in resting in nibbana. So I don't know if they're two. In some way, you could say they're two names for the same thing. I don't know if you can really distinguish between them enough to decide which one is the best. Most appreciated, sir. Hope the black cat doing well. Yes, she is. She's hiding up right now. She's not showing herself out. Uh, okay, maybe I'll take a couple more and we'll call it for now. Does my karma stimulate others' karma so that myself and others meet in rebirth to full karma effect? Yeah, this is often the case that people get linked up, their karma gets linked up with other beings, and they end up being reborn into the same circles again and again, although their roles might change, but being born into the same family and friend groups, lifetime after lifetime. There's many stories in the suttas and the commentaries about these sorts of things, and I think it happens a lot. In Digha Nikaya 1, that's the Brahmajala Sutta, saying the mind is eternal is the wrong view and describes eternalism. Why would considering the Nibbana as unconditioned aspect of the mind be considered wrong view? I don't know if I'd say it's wrong view, but I'd say it's unwarranted speculation. And again, I caution not just try to give up on definitions and explaining of nibbana. It's never fruitful to go too far down that road. Okay, I'll take one more. Why is it Theravada tradition the only one who teaches the Four Noble Truths is most important to understand? In others, this is not the forefront. I don't know. I think that Four Noble Truths is present in all the different branches of Buddhism, but I think it maybe is true that Theravada emphasizes it, that it is the foundation of the Buddhist teaching. All the rest of the Buddhist teaching is really, you could say, an expansion or a commentary on the Four Noble Truths. And that was his first real sermon or discourse, and then he spent 40 years fleshing out the details. Like the dependent origination, for example, can be seen as a detailed explanation of first and second truth. And most of the teachings around practice and ways of living and ways of meditating are expansions of various path factors. Okay, so I'll stop there for today, and we'll round out this series next week with the last talk on the last aggregate, vijnana, which is a consciousness, and it's a very important and difficult topic. So we'll get back to that next week, and hopefully it'll bring everything together. Okay, bye now.